name is Blaine Arcade. This is an interactive fiction writing stream. We have a variety of activities. We do custom stories for new followers based on prompts they provide, written live on stream and gifted to them, rights and all. We do have time for that today. A dead rat. Hello, welcome to chat. How you doing? This your first time at the arcade rodeo? Should say in the arcade cabinet. That's what I'm trying to get to catch on. Can you provide a writing prompt? You sure can. We do still have time today. The only limitations really are that it only be one sentence or two sentences, that it not be fan fiction, and that it not be, terribly obscene or inappropriate or anything like that. And then I'll take a couple minutes to think about it, and I'll take about an hour to write a 2-page story based on it, and then I gift the story to you, rights and all, via verbal contract, and it goes up on my blog. That's the only place it has to stay on my end, where you can find it and do whatever you want with it. Read it, share it, alter it, nothing. All of these are acceptable. You do have to be following the channel, is the only requirement. I don't know if you are yet. You write science fiction, right? Yes, I do. Science fiction and fantasy. And a little bit of horror and experimental stuff. Everything speculative, basically.
There.
Dead Rat, thank you for the there. Thank you for the follow. You are now ready to receive a story. In a world where you can be anything, be a cyborg as a prompt. Is that okay? That is perfectly acceptable. We can run with that. We've had people try and just do jokes as prompts. I take those seriously too, and we write those out. Once I did a story where the prompt was a fish that has bad gas, and it was still an all right story. So let's get our blank document pulled up here. There it is. Our prompt, courtesy of a dead rat. Is, in a world where you can be anything, be a cyborg. Perfect. All right, so what we do now is the quietest part of the stream. I do apologize for that, as we take a few minutes to brainstorm, think up the outline for the story, get maybe an ending in there, and then we move forward with the writing. It usually takes about an hour, usually gets us around 2 pages. There are some exceptions here and there. All right, so what I usually do is rip the prompt open a little bit, look for the most unusual word or the most unusual phrasing, and use that as the basis, the hook, the angle for the story to make it as unique as possible. So, in a world where you can be anything, be a cyborg. What I'm seeing that we can focus on is the world where you can be anything part. What is the mechanism by which anybody could be anything in this world, and why would somebody choose to be a cyborg within it? Those circumstances alone could be sufficient for a small story here. An exciting, dramatic scene. Make it a little bit bigger. Bold. I'm gonna call this the job unfair. To start with, anyway. All right, the most difficult point is the first sentence, so we usually try and bang that out pretty quickly. As soon as I pick a name here. What a waste. Thought every single child in the world, once they learned what all the words meant. Usually around 11 years old. All right, there it is. A dead rat. Hopefully you approve. We'll do a dramatic reading in a moment here. And we'll try and make it as seamless as possible, even if I spot some errors. Because I'm going to try and edit this basically in one take into a YouTube video. All right, with this story completed, A Dead Rat, it now transfers to you in terms of rights, ownership, with the only caveat being that it will remain posted on my blog in some form so that you can find it, so others can find it. But you are free to do with it whatever you please. Let's settle in here and try and do a one-take-ish dramatic reading of it. Prompt, courtesy of A Dead Rat. In a world where you can be anything, be a cyborg. The job? Unfair. What a waste, thought every single child in the world once they learned what all the words meant, usually around 11 years old. You can be anything, all the books, posters, instructors, parents, and facilitators said. 11 is when you figured out there was a second silent sentence after the first. You can be anything, as long as it's from the approved list. Wilt, now 6 years past this revelation, entered the job fair complex alongside his nervous mother. Domed white ceilings crisscrossing with beams draped 100 banners, each playing a highlight reel of a different profession. The knowledge and experience of all these smiling professionals had come from the same exact place, the gates that Wilt and the other recently adult prospects would stroll through in the next few hours. His mother was a short, nervous woman, making it all too easy to see over her on tiptoe, spy any faces he knew from school. Some of his graduating class should have been there, held back from the job fair just like him for irresponsible tendencies. The second silent phrase trailing that went something like, "Head in the thunderclouds." Hey, there was Kelly. And Amir. And Francine, too. If anyone got held back longer than Wilt, it would have been her. But it looked like her contractor father, standing there with I-beam arms crossed, was thoroughly tired of having her around the house. When the first recruiters had shown up back in 3rd grade and asked everyone what they wanted to be when they grew up, Francine had upended all the future doctors, lawyers, coast guardians, and master chefs by saying, "Mutant monstrosity terrorizing the city." Only Wilt had laughed. Adults ignored that kind of thing the first time they heard it, shouted it down the second, and started making permanent marks in their files by the third. You didn't make jokes about the job fair. If you did, the rest of your life could have become the joke, and you wouldn't be laughing for long. His mother pulled him forward. The line was moving swiftly. It usually did. The process was so quick and painless. Effects usually took several minutes to manifest after passing through the gate. Nothing ever went wrong on the technical end, as the nano-recruiters were nowhere near as flawed as the human ones. They were their own software therapists and wound mechanics. Too small to see, it was only the people full of them, showing off everything they were headed for between the lines, that could make clear the results of the job fair program. Acrobats with chrome ligaments swung and flipped from beams overhead. Even if their internal gyros failed, a fall would cause little harm thanks to the springs spiraling up their legs. People with much more mundane positions still displayed superhuman skills and tools, words that had become interchangeable. Guys from loading docks carried out stone cubes nearly twice their own size. A human traffic light displayed mesmerizing patterns down her chest with just green, yellow, and red. Warehouse technician, traffic controller, even acrobat. These were all official approved positions. Not what Wilt always said, that got him held back from the fair until he said something else. Cyborg. It was a silly suggestion, as technically they were all cyborgs. The nano-recruiters flooded your pores and orifices as you passed through the gate. They read the strongest silent suggestion of your brain's electrical activity, and then they went to work, installing all the knowledge you would need for that profession, and an individualized set of tools to help you along the way. No more training, draining a company's profits. No more faking your qualifications. A perfect worker could be made to order. The only problem was the worker issued the order. Thanks to several laws of robotics, some of them written by the nano-recruiters themselves, no such change could be made against anyone's will. They had to want it, and they had to want something specific enough for the little machines to assemble inside them. They were close enough to see the gates now. Wilt looked over at Francine. She did the same. Neither smiled. Years of every authority figure telling them they better not pick wrong. You could. The recruiters would make you whatever mess you wanted to be, but the rest of society was not obligated to include you. Without an attached salary, you did not qualify for most housing, most device licenses, or for government office. The only thing you really became was a pariah, or an asylum patient. Not me, though, Wilt assured himself. If he just thought cyborg as hard as he could, and not astronaut minor, as he'd informed his mother and all his tutors, then they would give him tools for every task. It kept his potential open, could even include roles like superhero and babe magnet. The little guys would get it. It came to his turn, and Francine's. Each looked at their parent. Wilt's poor mother was just human, no additions or upgrades, as the process required a certain neurological malleability present only in youth. She wanted so much for him, and he didn't want to disappoint, but he remembered that he wanted so much more than she did. "Please, step through," a man with goggles for eyes and safety lights for hands told him. Did that guy even work when the job fair wasn't going on? Not the time to think that. Time to think cyborg. Passing through felt like nothing but being near a lightning strike. Without the startle of its crashing sound, he could focus on the way the energies pooled in his joints, in the basin of his brainstem. His mother skirted the gate, joined him on the other side, and then they went to sit on the comfort benches, with all those complimentary pillows and their tissue cases to await the change. They didn't say anything. The truth would be on his skin in minutes, and not in the form of an unfolding pickaxe or retractable space helmet. Instead, he got titanium skin, and green laser eyes, and panels all over, from which he could extend all manner of simple and complex devices. The thrill of not being pinned down, of the pin bouncing off with a metallic tink, filled him with a rush that was entirely human. "What have you done?" his mother groaned once she realized, but her own disappointment was nothing compared to the anger of Francine's father. He was screaming his head off, so everyone sat up from their terribly flimsy pillows and stared. Francine had lost her head too, the old replaced with new. Metal seams marked where her limbs extended, split into many more, like mantis claws. Jointed tentacles emerged from her mouth and her throat's new bay door, each tipped with a blinding light. Yup, Wilt thought. There's a mutant monstrosity, all right. She'd gone through with it, too. Finally, now that she was taller than her father, she could act on her rage. Somewhere behind those squirming tendrils there was still a voice box, which emitted a terrible alien roar as she pounced on the man, slashed at him with claws that did little damage thanks to his construction modifications. She didn't stay long, as she wanted everyone at the job fair to know exactly what she thought of the whole program and what it tried to do to her. One recruiter went down. 2, 3, Francine plucked an acrobat out of the air and tossed her incidentally into a pile of shrink-wrapped pillows. Now it was Wilt's turn to spring into action. Utilizing the general enhancements encompassed in the word cyborg, he leapt a great distance onto her back, wrapped his legs around her. She bucked in response, tumbled, thrashed. In turn, he extended a singing, vibrating blade that was strong enough to split her extra appendages. They grew back quickly. It wasn't like she hadn't thought about what she might need as a mutant monstrosity. Still, she needed raw materials to be like the Hydra of old, and now it looked like she couldn't get too many there, thanks to the heroics of this surprise cyborg. His former friend roared again, just as a final insult, and then fled with incredible speed. Cheers erupted, all for Wilt. A crowd stopped him from helping his third recruiter to their feet. He knew his mother was off on the sidelines somewhere, too fragile to wade into a crowd of rambunctious recruited without taking serious injury. It worked. He didn't need an official approved position. They just had to think he was brave. Eventually, he would be. For now, that practice with Francine was good enough. She held up her end of the bargain admirably. They could meet up later and relive it all they wanted. When they'd agreed to the fight, to be triggered by their new bodies, she'd said something about going to live in the nearest national park. That sounded better than a real job, too. The end.